59% of Canadians are right now skipping meals, skipping prescriptions, or skipping their kids' activities, not because they're broke, but because their rent or mortgage ate the money first. That's not a recession statistic. That's a 2026 statistic from a country that keeps telling the world it's one of the best places to live. Here's the part nobody says out loud. The pain is not spread evenly. It is brutally concentrated in specific postal codes, and there are Canadians right now, quietly, who figured that out and left. They're paying $1,100 a month for rent instead of $2,715. They own a home that cost $261,000, not $1.1 million. They have money left over at the end of the month, actual, real, leftover money. This video is the map they used. We're going to walk through 9 locations across Canada, some you know, some you've never considered, where the math flips completely, where your income actually works, where the system isn't squeezing you dry. One of these cities has seen the fastest population growth in the entire country, and the media is barely mentioning it. One of them has a federal government program attached to it that virtually nobody knows exists, and it could change your entire financial situation legally this year. Stay with me, because if you click away before item 6, you're going to miss the one that'll make you angry you didn't hear about this sooner. Let's start with the honest picture. As of early 2026, the national average asking rent in Canada sits at $2,060 a month. That's for a rental unit, not a house, not a condo you own, a rental. The benchmark price for a home in Metro Vancouver is $1,098,000. In Greater Toronto, it's $941,800. And Vancouver's home prices are now 13.4 times the median household income in the city. 13.4. Think about what that actually means. If your household earns the local median, $61,000 a year in Vancouver, you would need to save every single dollar you ever earned for over 13 years with zero expenses to buy an average home. Not a nice home, an average one. The result? According to research compiled as of 2026, 75% of Canadian renters are actively sacrificing basic needs, food, clothing, medication, to keep up with housing costs. 1 in 10 low-income households can afford a 2-bedroom rental at the national average rent. Just 1 in 10. And evictions across the country rose 40% between 2020 and 2023, with no meaningful reversal in sight. That's the wall most Canadians are staring at. But here's what nobody's telling you. That wall only exists in certain places, and the escape routes are real, specific, affordable, and they're filling up fast. Picture a small city sitting at the geographic center of Atlantic Canada. Rail lines converging, 2 official languages, rivers, parks, and a downtown that's been quietly growing for a decade. This is Moncton, New Brunswick, and right now it's the fastest growing census metropolitan area in Canada. Not the fastest growing in the Maritimes, in Canada. The average residential home sale price in Moncton landed at $386,131 as of 2025, and projections for 2026 put it around $396,500. Meanwhile, the median rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in January 2026 was sitting around $1,300 a month. The overall cost of living is 6.3% below the national average. Here's the human translation. A family moving from Toronto to Moncton doesn't just save on rent, they save on groceries, utilities, commuting, daycare, the whole stack. A couple spending $4,200 a month to survive in the GTA could recreate the same lifestyle in Moncton for roughly $2,400 to $2,600. That's $1,600 to $1,800 back in your pocket every single month. And because this city is growing, because there's actual economic activity here, actual jobs in healthcare, education, transportation, and bilingual services, this isn't a place you retreat to. This is a place you move forward from. Write this one down, Moncton, New Brunswick, because by the time it's famous, the prices will be different. But speaking of people moving, the numbers on who's already leaving Canada's most expensive cities might shock you, and it changes everything about what the next item means. Ontario lost a net 48,404 residents to other provinces in 2024 and 2025. That's not a rumor, that's from Statistics Canada. Almost 50,000 people did the math, packed their things, and voted with their moving truck. And they're not leaving because Ontario is empty or boring. They're leaving because the numbers stopped working. Because a province that was supposed to represent opportunity became the province that represents unaffordable. Where are they going? Alberta, mostly. Some to Nova Scotia, some to New Brunswick, a surprising number to Quebec, specifically to cities that don't get headlines. The reason this matters to you isn't that Ontario is dying. It isn't. The reason this matters is that these 48,000 people figured something out that most people are still debating. They stopped waiting for affordability to come to them. They went to where affordability already existed. Ontario is not the only province shedding residents either. British Columbia posted its largest sustained interprovincial loss in 20 years. People are moving, quietly, strategically. And the ones who moved 3 years ago, they own homes now. The question is whether you're watching them on social media or joining them. There's a city in southeastern Alberta that sits on the South Saskatchewan River, gets more sunshine hours per year than almost anywhere else in the country, and has an average home price of $261,000. Not $500,000, not $400,000, $261,000. Medicine Hat is small, around 65,000 people, but it punches above its weight. Oil and gas employment, agriculture, a genuine downtown with local coffee shops, river trails, and the kind of community you remember from 30 years ago. A Money Sense analysis identified it as the third cheapest city in Canada for comfortable single-person living, requiring roughly $70,416 a year. In Vancouver, that number is nearly double. For a family, the savings compound fast. Rent for a 2-bedroom unit runs dramatically below the national average. Grocery bills track lower. Car insurance is lower than in Ontario, and there's no provincial income tax tied to a pension crisis that isn't yours. Here's the thing about Medicine Hat that doesn't show up in the listings. It replaced Lethbridge on the 2026 list of Canada's most affordable cities by province, not because Lethbridge got worse, but because Medicine Hat's value-to-quality ratio improved. The market is noticing what the movers already know. And it's quiet here, intentionally quiet. That's not a bug. For a lot of Canadians who've spent a decade paying city prices for city stress, quiet is the whole point. Hold that thought, because what's coming up next is the point in this video where most people watching hit replay. We're halfway through this list, and we haven't even gotten to the government program that could legally change your housing situation this year. Don't skip this.
Most English Canadians write off Quebec City as somewhere French people live. That bias is costing them money. As of January 2026, the average one-bedroom rent in Quebec City is $1,364 a month. The city has over 120 life sciences companies operating within it. The Quebec government injected nearly $271.5 million in a renewed life sciences strategy for 2025 to 2028. The architecture is UNESCO level. The food scene is serious. The winters are real, yes, but so is the financial relief. Here's what changes the calculation for English Canadians specifically. You don't need to be perfectly bilingual to build a life here. What you do need is a willingness to try and an honest answer to the question, would I trade $1,400 a month rent in this beautiful, stable, genuinely historic city for the $2,700 I'm paying right now? For thousands of Canadians, the honest answer is yes. They just hadn't been told the offer existed. Okay, if you've made it this far, you've already seen 4 places where your money works harder. You've seen the migration data, the price gaps, the real numbers from real markets. But this next one, this is the one most people turn off before they get to. And that's a mistake. Because item 6 isn't a city, it's a door. And the federal government quietly opened it in 2026, specifically for Canadians who are ready to move somewhere smaller.
In early 2025, the federal government launched the Rural Community Immigration Pilot, the RCIP. As of February 2026, 14 communities across 6 provinces are participating. Places like Sault Ste. Marie, Thunder Bay, North Bay, P-Sliard in British Columbia, the North Okanagan Shuswap, Claresholm, Alberta. Here's what this program does. It creates a direct pathway to permanent residence for skilled workers who commit to living and working in these smaller communities. Lower language requirements than express entry, acceptance of semi-skilled occupations, 2-year work permits that let you start immediately, open work permits for your spouse, and critically, a direct PR pathway. Not a lottery, not a points race. But that's not even the biggest piece. In April 2026, Immigration Minister Lena Metlidge-Diab confirmed a new temporary resident to permanent resident pathway. 33,000 spots available across 2026 and 2027. And unlike the 2021 version of this program, which was open to urban areas, this one explicitly excludes Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. It is designed by law for smaller communities only. If you're a temporary resident already working outside a major city, or if you're a Canadian who knows someone in that situation, this pathway could close in hours when it opens. The 2021 version crashed government servers within the first day. If you're a Canadian citizen considering a move, the communities on this list are actively trying to attract workers. That means employers are motivated. That means housing is still available. And that means the people who move in the next 12 months will look back in 5 years and realize they timed it right. Search Rural Community Immigration Pilot Canada 2026 on the Government of Canada website, canada.ca. That's where to start.
There's a city in Quebec's eastern townships where 1-bedroom apartments average $1,100 a month, and the University of Sherbrooke, with 40,000 students and the largest employer in the region, keeps the economy humming year-round. Sherbrooke is about 180,000 people. It's connected by major rail lines and highways. The cultural calendar is active. There are hiking trails, rivers, and the kind of unhurried pace that doesn't feel like a downgrade, it feels like a decision. And because of its student population, the city skews young and progressive without the sticker shock of Montreal. The cost of living here is a fraction of what Toronto charges for an identical lifestyle. Rent, groceries, utilities, childcare, all of it tracks significantly below the national average. Families moving here from Ontario frequently describe the same thing. They expected to feel like they were settling. Instead, they felt like they were exhaling for the first time in years. That's worth something. Actually, that's worth $1,800 a month, which is roughly the gap between what they were paying before and what they pay now.
Alberta posted its 14th consecutive quarterly gain from interprovincial migration in the fourth quarter of 2025. 14 straight quarters. That's not a trend, that's a verdict. People keep moving to Alberta because the math keeps working. In Calgary, the average 1-bedroom rent was $1,535 in January 2026, significantly more affordable than Toronto or Vancouver, with a tech sector that grew 61.1% between 2021 and 2024. Edmonton runs even lower. Medicine Hat, which we already covered, sits in a different category entirely. But here's the piece that gets overlooked. Alberta has no provincial income tax on lower income brackets in the way Ontario and British Columbia structure theirs. That adds up. For a household making $85,000 a year, the difference in provincial tax burden between Alberta and Ontario can amount to thousands of dollars annually, money that's yours, not the province's. The people who moved to Alberta 3 years ago own property now. They bought when the headlines were still saying wait and see. They didn't wait, they moved. And right now, in 2026, the province is still absorbing people, which means the window is still open. But windows don't stay open forever. They never do.
Here's what all 9 of these places have in common. None of them are secrets. The data is public. The programs are real. The prices are on rentals.ca right now if you want to look. What makes them feel like secrets is that nobody told you to look there. The conversation around Canadian affordability is almost always framed around what's broken, not around what's working. And things are working. In Moncton, in Medicine Hat, in Sherbrooke, in Sault Ste. Marie, in every city on this list. Remember the stat we opened with. 59% of Canadians sacrificing basic needs to afford their housing. That is not a fixed reality. That is a geography problem. And geography, unlike interest rates, unlike government policy, unlike global economic cycles, is something you can actually change. If you're the kind of person who's been quietly wondering whether staying put is a choice or just a habit, this video was the answer to that question. The escape map exists. It's specific, it's affordable, and the people who use it aren't the ones with more money. They're the ones who stopped waiting for permission. One thing you can do today? Pull up the cost of living calculator at rentals.ca and type in one city from this list. Just one. See what your current rent buys there. That's it. That's the first step. Because the worst version of this story isn't that you looked and decided to stay. It's that you never looked at all.